Welcome to the reality show, day 143 of the war in Israel. That war is going on, but at the same time, the war that Israel is fighting, as it said, to destroy Hamas after October 7th. While it's going on, Israel is also negotiating with Hamas, and most recently over this past weekend in Paris. We're going to talk about that today. I believe we're going to talk about something else. I will look up what that is. But before that, I will introduce my co-hosts, Michael, Marco, Richard. How's it going, everybody?
Oh, well, thank you.
Hey,
Very good. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, there are negotiations. Israel, those negotiations aren't working because uh, when you negotiate with terrorists, you are telling them, well, terrorism works. You kill people, you rape people, you take people hostages, and then we will come towards you and offer you things that nobody else would be offered. So one of the things in this negotiation, as opposed to the previous one, where some prisoners were released by Israel, Palestinian prisoners, was that this time people who were convicted of murder will actually be released, whereas previously it was people who tried but didn't succeed. So your initial thoughts on these negotiations, Michael?
I think it's utterly absurd that Israel would negotiate with Hamas. First of all, like you said, when you negotiate with terrorists, it only incentivizes terrorists to commit more terrorist actions. But also, what they're getting isn't even a fair deal. I mean, they're getting, I think, what was it, 40 hostages back, 35 or 40 hostages back. They're giving up over 100 prisoners, Palestinian prisoners. They're also giving them a ceasefire temporarily. It's just, it's mind-numbing how dumb this is for them to do, but they've done it before. And then the stuff just keeps happening. They negotiate with terrorists, they get more terrorist attacks, they do more negotiating and more terrorist attacks, and it just doesn't seem to phase them, or maybe they don't learn, or maybe it's just public pressure. And I certainly understand a family member of a hostage who wants Israel to do everything they can to get their family member back. I get it. Emotions are running high. These are their loved ones. But when you're a government and you're dealing with these people, you have to use logic. You have to be more level-headed, or else you just create more of these problems in the future.
Yeah, I quickly want to point out, because we hear about the families of the hostages in Israel protesting, demanding a deal, and so on. And this is true. Some families are involved in that. Other families of hostages are involved in the other protests in the Kerem Shalom crossing to Gaza, who are, and I've said this is the only protest that I would, happily go and join. They're trying to prevent humanitarian aid from going into Gaza. Of course, humanitarian aid means aid to the enemy in their war effort, and they don't like that while that enemy is holding their loved ones hostage. Marco.
Yeah, it's beyond incredible that this is happening. The fact that Hamas is in the position of making requests is just it's just hard to believe at this point. As I said before, Hamas have gone into Israel and effectively taken innocent hostages. And the West, what is it doing? It's giving them cards to negotiate the return of some of the hostages under certain terms that Hamas determines. It's just nonsensical. We're effectively supporting a sort of Islamic slave trade here. We allow these savages to go capture free people and then sell them for whatever they need at the time. I mean, we're talking about human beings. How can you possibly go to a terrorist organization and say, "Oh, that's okay. Give us 3 women. We give you a load of fuel. What do you need? Something else? Do you need weapons? Here's some weapons. Go and get more people. Why don't you kidnap children next time? Perhaps you're going to be even more lenient towards your terms." It's just, if somebody steals your iPhone and offers you back a Nokia, and in exchange for some cash as well, you would never accept that. And now we're talking about human lives here. and it seems it seems fine to have this kind of trading like that cattle. It's just infuriating and just so stupid.
Yeah, Hamas's currency is human lives, and by negotiating with them, you're accepting these as legal tender. And at worse than that, you're actually inviting them to go out there and mine for more human coin in the future. And for anyone anywhere who needs pull or leverage to exploit human capital and turn it into something that you can take and turn into some demands. And not to labor the analogy, but what's the outcome of all this? It's inflation. Inflation of hostage taking, inflation of pragmatism as destroying values, inflation of evil reaping the rewards of your capitulation to it. All of that's what occurs. And then people wonder, why is good struggling? Why is evil growing? Because of your capitulation to it. And it's all down to a lack of long-range thinking, because without long-range thinking, you can't identify principles and live by them. And the reaction to all of this is short-range thinking. Short range is exactly what's going on all the time here. The photograph is the ultimate example of short-range thinking. It's a little snapshot that doesn't think beyond that snapshot, whether it's a snapshot of hostages, a snapshot of kids in the rubble. It doesn't understand the principles behind it and the long-term implications of how you got here and what tomorrow will mean if you do what you're claiming you need to do right now because of this one moment.
Yeah, now, I mentioned at the beginning, I don't remember what the next topic is. The next topic is the American soldier who burned himself in front of the Israeli embassy or consulate. But yeah, on this point of the hostages, so in Israel, again, like even people, certainly the families of the hostages, but the sentiment that people have of wanting the hostages back, of course, is comes from a good place, and is not just comes from a good place, it also comes from the realization of what it is. This is not, this is being a hostage held by Hamas is not like being in prison in the UK, which is basically a 3-star hotel. This is really like you're held by the same animals who did what they did on October 7th, what they did that we talked about in the report that we talked about on the episode last week, the Palestinian way. These are the people holding Israeli hostages. So every second they're there is like a lifetime for them. And I said on October 7th, when we did the episode hours into the show, that what Israel needs to do is declare the Hannibal Directive all over Gaza. The Hannibal Directive is if somebody is taken hostage, you fire knowing that you are very likely to kill them, but you are killing their takers. And chances are, their death is the best thing that can happen to them in that moment. So again, that will to free them is of course is right, but not many people are talking about the idea that Israel keeps threatening a ground operation in Rafah. A ground operation in Rafah is even if you are going to negotiate, which of course I don't think you should. That puts the kind of pressure that got the previous deal to look better than this deal. The fact that Israel is stepping back militarily means that negotiation-wise it is worse off. But better yet, you might actually free some hostages in that operation. And even better yet, if you're not negotiating and instead you are fighting and you're saying if you take our hostages, you will not get murderers released, but you will die. Then it's I think the future that you're creating is better than what Israel is doing, which of course, this happened. The mastermind of October 7th was released in a previous exchange. Who is being released now? We can only guess. Michael.
I can only guess who's being released. I have no idea.
Well, I mean, we can only guess who they are, who they will become, and what they will do in the future. Are there more Yihya Sinwars among the people released?
Well, I would imagine so. You mentioned the ground operation that's perhaps coming in Rafah. I wonder if Israel is actually going to do this or if they're just bluffing in order to get some kind of a deal done. I ultimately don't know what their end game is. I know Netanyahu recently put out this plan for after the war, and there's a lot of debate on social media and in the press about it, but I really don't know that Israel has the fortitude to do what it takes to win this. And my question that I always have to come back to, and I mean, it's not like it amounts to much. My support for Israel doesn't really do much for them, but I just wonder how much support I have to, or morally, I should give to somebody that's not willing to do what's necessary to win the fight. What I mean by that is I have a philosophy when it comes to personal relationships, for instance, that I will help somebody to the degree that they're willing to help themselves. So if I've got a friend that says that he wants to improve himself, or if somebody comes to me and says they want to engage in self-improvement, I'll put in as much effort as that person puts in, but I'm not going to put in more. If somebody's not willing to do the work themselves, then what am I doing? And if Israel, if this is what they're going to do when their hostages are taken, just release Palestinian criminals, it gets to the point where, okay, well then what am I doing? Why do I make arguments for Israel? Why am I getting aggravated with anti-Jewish people on, X or Facebook or anywhere else if Israel's not even willing to do what it takes to win the war?
Marco.
Well, I understand your point, Michael, but the issue is I'm not fighting. Well, I'm not making this argument for Israel as such. I'm making it for myself. I'm making it because we are taking the moral line. We are the ones who actually understand that self-defense is a right. When somebody attacks you, you have to fight back and fight back without pulling punches. And you're right. Israel is effectively preparing itself down the negotiation route. Is preparing itself for another attack in 3 to 5 years' time. Hamas will regroup. Perhaps they will even rebrand. They will call themselves something else. But they're still gonna steal UNRWA money. They're still gonna steal UN money and take weapons through the Rafah connection entrance to Israel. To Egypt. And they will still prepare another assault, and they will want to wipe out Israel and the Jews. So, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm in this intellectual fight because I know what's right. I have my certainties. I know that the world can be, you can determine your life. You can live a happy life because you're a rational person and you can choose to choose rational values and fight for your own happiness. And yes, they're doing that. But if they don't understand it, they will keep. We're gonna be here again in 5-6 years' time. Probably something even bigger. There's nothing I can do in order to change Israel's mind. But if I can only affect one person, change one mind, I'm in the fight till the end.
And the right thing to do is still the right thing to do, even if the better people are failing to do it. And I think that is kind of the point of the channel's focus at the moment, despite it being focused on Israel and the war in Gaza. This is a concrete, but it's an example of much wider principles. And the wider principles are the valid point of focusing on that, of focusing on this and identifying what those principles are and explaining them out. Yes, it's always frustrating when better people don't do what you would like them to do, and that's always disappointing. But they are the ones that need to repeatedly hear why they're not doing what they should be doing, as opposed to saying, "I give up on you." I side with your enemy because you're not stepping up enough. But I know you're not. I know I'm exaggerating your position, but I understand the frustration. And so far, there is an argument that Israel has done quite a bit of what it should have done. Not enough for any one of us to be satisfied, and they've paid far too much attention to the existence of hostages, and that's held them back from how they could have responded and how quickly and decisively this war could have been brought to a conclusion and Hamas could have been defeated. But nevertheless, we're now talking about a region of Gaza where Hamas need to be defeated in, not the whole of Gaza. The dangerous point comes right now, however, when you're effectively negotiating possibly for the return of Palestinians and, of course, Hamas within them to northern Gaza. And that would seriously be a mistake, because that would seriously undo the progress made so far in extracting Hamas from the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, and I'm among those people who definitely do not like the way Israel is fighting, but prefer it to nothing. And I think a ground operation in Rafah would cost Israeli lives. It would cost soldiers' lives. It's if all or almost all the hostages are there, there's a good chance hostages will die as part of the fighting. Yeah, I look at even the north of Gaza today. There's some reports that there are still thousands of terrorists there. And so that area, when we look at aerial pictures of it, it looks good. It looks like Israel actually did what needs to be done. But yeah, there's still a threat there, and Israel will pay a heavy price for its weakness in the speed in which Hamas will regroup, because of course it will not be destroyed. But yeah, if Netanyahu is not bluffing, and if there is actually going to be an operation in Rafah, which if you look at voices from around the world and how much pressure they're putting on Israel, this will be bad for Israel diplomatically, but it needs to be something needs to be done there, and Israel will not flatten Rafah, which is what I think needs to be done. So yeah, some sort of operation there, I think is the best, unfortunately, the best that we can hope for. Michael.
Well, I'm by no means, I don't know much about military strategy and military tactics. I've been a little bit different, on the show and in my advocacy elsewhere, in saying that Israel should minimize civilian casualties. So when I'm saying that they're not doing things right, I'm not necessarily referring to their battlefield tactics or they're not going hard enough. But to me, to negotiate with these people is an immoral act. It's an immoral act that's basically self-sacrificial. And it just gets to the point where how much can I defend an entity, as say the Israeli government, that is engaging in self-sacrifice? Marco is absolutely right. The principle of self-defense, that all needs to be understood and clarified. This is a concrete situation of that. I'm steadfast in my belief in the moral superiority of Israel to Hamas. But when I say that, it's important also to keep in mind who I'm comparing them to, right? Because there's not many entities that are not morally superior to Hamas. And I think Israel largely respects the rights of its people, but I also think there's negatives there in terms of social welfare policy, collectivism, religion. And now when you just throw in this continual appeasement of these people by turning over people that you've already caught in the past for doing things that are harmful to your country, it's not just dumb to me, but it's actually immoral. And I'm not saying would give up on Israel right now. I'm just saying there comes a point in time when I have to say to myself, okay, they're not the ethical entity that I thought they were. They're engaging in ways that I disapprove of, and I can't keep defending them. And I get that you didn't, really, you were exaggerating my position, Richard, but I would never even come close to defending Hamas. I mean, they're disgusting. And no matter what the Israeli government happens to do, I don't think that warrants attacks on Israeli civilians. The way in which they were done. You're not talking about somebody taking shots at the Israeli government and, people getting killed. You're talking about the deliberate attack and torture of civilians. That's never justified.
Marco.
Well, even the fact that Hamas is still here to put forward a proposal, that's just repellent, as Razi said from the beginning, and as Yaron reported the suggestion from a general who said, tell the population to move to the beach, give them 2 or 3 days to move to the beach, and what's left behind is going to be flattened. And that should have been really the solution that Israel should have had already ready as a plan of attack should something like this happen. They didn't, and yeah, it's for on them. But it's not just Israel, unfortunately. You're right, Michael. Israel is far from the ideal moral country. Let's not forget it's full of wacky religious people who believe in the big guy in the sky. But the problem here is that the West is actually trying to divert Israel from taking the moral steps, to take the steps that it should have the right to do. We're effectively telling all these kind of savage and terrorists and wackos in the world, okay, attack us, we're going to fight back, but when we get to about 200, 300, 500, 1,000 people dead on your side, we're going to start looking at our position because we're so much better than you, and we love life. And effectively, you're opening yourself for all sorts of abuses. Who would ever deal with a bully by keep paying them the lunch money in the school ground? How are you ever going to get rid of something like that if you keep allowing them and forcing them? You're feeding vermin. They keep coming back, don't they? So how are you going to get rid of them if you behave like that? And the West is actually absolutely appalling about this. And we should really be ashamed of our reaction and response.
Yeah, and that's a crucial part of this. It's not just that we've got a friend who's not stepping up in the way we want, and we want them to be the better version of themselves that we know they can be, but all our other friends are also giving them lousy advice to talk them in the opposite direction, which is going to allow Hamas to regroup, Hamas to buy more time, Hamas to save its own skin, which is the only reason it's negotiating in the first place, and to return to northern Gaza under the human shield of the Palestinian people that they use to cover them as they go, because they want to cover up their secrets that are being exposed by the day to the world through the IDF and through Israel's revelation of where the extent of the tunnels, where they run, where weapons are, who's been complicit in looking the other way or worse when it comes to how Hamas has run the strip for the past 20 years. Then all of that is going to be undone if you allow a redress back to how things were, and the buying time of a ceasefire period through this hideous trade in human lives.
Yeah, I mean, look, we talk a lot about how Israel should do what needs to be done, regardless of what international opinion is, and I stand by that, but it's not unimportant. We've talked about things like the Eurovision Song Contest, and Israel might be out of that, and now there's talks, and there's some party in France that wants to not allow Israel to like carry the flag in the Olympics, and there's stuff like that. But there are things that are more significant, like if there are I think Spain and Ireland have been encouraging the European Union to suspend trade deals with Israel. There are people in the UK, strong voices that are against trade with Israel, certainly against arms trade. There are such voices in the US as well. So if Israel becomes isolated, that is going to be a problem for Israel going forward. So it's not an insignificant thing. Then again, this was known, that all of this was known on October 7th, and taking action immediately would have taking strong action that would have resulted in certainly many times more deaths among Palestinians than what Hamas is currently reporting, but in a day. That would have been diplomatically an easier sell. So Israel did put itself in this position, not just militarily, but diplomatically as well, and is now paying the price, or the people of Israel are paying the price for Netanyahu's weakness. within that context of what Israel can do, while maintaining its international relations, that keeps narrowing by the day. And so waiting for this Rafah operation as well is I think is something that Israel is harming itself by doing, not just because Hamas is getting stronger by the day. I kind of like the idea of, okay, let's wait to Ramadan. Maybe they will be fasting and they'll be hungry. That's not how it works. Israel needs to act now. Michael.
Well, we mentioned the West, and I don't know what the attitude is or the idea is, like the Palestinian state, for instance. Is the idea that if there were a Palestinian state, it's going to be some kind of a Western democratic republic? Because there's no evidence for that. A guy the other day on Facebook that I ended up blocking because I just got sick of his stupidity, but he said to me, oh, you advocate for individual rights and freedoms. Would you advocate for individual rights and freedoms for Palestinians? And the fact of the matter is, yeah, I would. I absolutely would advocate for their individual rights and their freedoms. But I said to him, well, what Palestinians are out there advocating for individual rights and capitalism? And his response was, well, they don't have a platform. I said, okay, well, when they did have the vote, and granted it was, 19 years ago or 18 years ago, they voted in Hamas. There was no indication then that they were interested in free market capitalism and individual rights. And I asked them, and for that matter, what Islamic country out there is an individual rights-based capitalistic country? Where are they? They simply don't exist. So the idea that we're going to, by calling on Israel to show constraint and, keeping their path open to a two-state solution is somehow going to solve this. It just doesn't. It doesn't work to solve that based on the philosophy of their opponents. They believe, as Marco said, in the big guy in the sky.
So, Michael, on the long list of things you and I disagree on is how to deal with trolls. You engage with them. I'm not a fan, but sometimes trolls in the comments just, it's too good not to read. I don't read their names when they're trolls, but I will read the comment. So somebody says, are you guys CIA or Mossad? Because as you know, Mossad, what they do is they do podcasts advocating for Israel, that like openly calling for support of Israel. I love it. If all of Israel's enemy could be like this guy, the situation is not as bad as we think it is.
Well, I don't know whether I'm allowed to say, but I am MI6.
Well, that actually would work because what you're saying is not consistent with British policy, because you're a bit too pro-Israel.
Oops.
I think one of the things here in terms of the negotiation that is not being brought to light is what has Hamas given up in the course of this? Where have they said we show remorse for October the 7th? Where have they said we give up an ounce of our ideology that led to October 7th? None of that is evident whatsoever. So they're holding steadfast to the evil ideology that led to it, and you're still negotiating with them. That is the height of lunacy.
And that's part of the problem, isn't it? Even the British government arguing we're going to push for a two-state solution. Well, it worked very well in the last 80 years, didn't it? We're not at this point because you were pushing the same line. You've been pushing the same line for 100 years. But still, they totally ignore the facts and they go ahead with their make-believe. And they assume that Hamas and the states around Israel actually want to install a democracy in the Middle East. Well, they're not. Just look at Iran. Iran is a sponsor state behind it. And why is it sponsoring this kind of activities? Because they are a theocratic dictatorship and they want more of that. Where's the resistance that you had in France under the Nazi in Gaza?
And look at all of the political clout you end up giving Hamas simply by negotiating at all. The fact that you've got the chief of Hamas meeting with the emir of Qatar in his palace, and then you've got an international gathering in Paris. You're making people look like statesmen who are scum. And how is that an answer to any of this? How is that not making things worse?
You know, on the issue of opposition, yeah. You know, we've said on this channel many times that the one place in the Middle East where there is real opposition is Iran. There is an actual movement there that I don't know how pro-freedom it is, because we know that they're against things that you should be against. We don't necessarily know what they're for, and I'm sure they're not all for exactly the same thing. But yeah, that's you know, that's one of those places where the West keeps telling Iran whenever Iranian proxies attack, we don't want to escalate. You know, the West keeps going out of its way to show weakness, whereas I'm sure the opposition in Iran would love it if we showed strength and went in there militarily. Among the Palestinians, we talked a little bit about recent, you know, seemingly some organization, and then you see a little bit of protest here and there. And there was one video of a protest where Hamas, this was a video, it was very dark. So I basically take the word of the person who tweeted it, but saying that Hamas was shooting at opposition, which of course, if there is opposition, Hamas would shoot at them, just like their Iranian masters would. But it doesn't matter. I've said, to me it doesn't matter. It's too late. You wanted to you know, you wanted to take down Hamas. You should have done that before they did what they did. Right now, there is no salvation for the Palestinians, and no forgiveness. Michael.
I just can't get it out of my head on what a dumb idea it would be for the Mossad to set up a British YouTube channel dedicated to the ideas of Ayn Rand. Like, who are we getting to? Like, who are we infiltrating at that point?
Actually, I'm being told right now that actually we now know who this person in the chat is, and if you can look through the window, one of our friends is there paying you a visit.
And the long-term planning that would be necessary to execute this key plan. I mean, surely they should have spent more time planning the operation in Gaza than infiltrating YouTube.
Yeah. And I mean, you're going to bring an ex-convict like me into the show? Like, who I'm reaching out to the convict constituency, I guess.
That's exactly how you put it over on people.
That's what I used to tell guys in the joint when they would talk to me about being Jewish and the Jewish conspiracy. I said, yeah, you know, I get the newsletter every month. I'm really just here to make it look good. You're so freaking stupid. I'm sorry, but I messed up the whole flow of the show, but that is just so idiotic.
Well, we do have another topic, so we can you know, we can wrap up the negotiation part. I think, yeah, the head of the Mossad would like us to get to the soldier.
Is that Jim Valiant? Is Jim Valiant the head of the Mossad?
Well, I would think the head of the Mossad would live in a place like San Diego. That's you know, they deserve it. So, Michael, any last thoughts on the negotiation, or are you still stuck on the?
No, I'm good on the negotiation. Well, I'm not good on it. I think it's a bad idea, but I'm good to move on from it.
Marco?
Well, what more can you say? Such a ridiculous thing. I mean, the fact that it's happening is just heartbreaking, really, that something like this is carrying on. Because you know, in the future it's going to be more and more this kind of stuff. So,
and the details don't particularly matter, as we've kind of brought out here. It doesn't matter exactly which numbers are for what numbers, although some of the details themselves are telling. The fact that the Hamas is demanding more prisoners be released for female soldiers that have been captured tells you a lot about their morality. But even so, that the detail of is irrelevant to the principle itself, which is don't negotiate with hostage takers and encourage more of them in the future. Period.
Willful Thinker in the chat says, South Park has a funny episode about the proverbial personal bag of Jew gold. I mean, that's not funny. It is funny. It is a good episode in part because it makes fun of the climate catastrophism and so on. But that episode, there is actually a bag of Jew gold around the Jewish person's neck. So that I found less funny. But
I've
South
got
Park,
it right here. Full of gold.
that looks like a Gentile bag at least. I don't
It
know what's inside it.
is.
Um, Thank you, Kathleen, for the super chat. Kathleen says, you guys are heroes. Thank you for the persistent, consistent, high quality commentary on good versus evil. Thank you. And speaking of evil and how the indoctrination of evil ideas where it can end up. So a U.S. soldier, people like mentioning his name. I don't think that's necessary, but if any of you want to, you can go ahead. Uh, um, Basically set himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington. He explained that he doesn't want to be, will no longer be complicit in genocide, and was shouting "Free Palestine" as he burned. You know, I forgot that this is our second topic, and I also forgot about it in the Owen Jones episode. Part of watching hours of Owen Jones, what it does to years ago in America, there was this ad, I think it was with an egg, like this is your brain, and then this is your brain on drugs. Well, your brain on Owen Jones is not much better, so it kind of slipped my mind. But I think of this as the result, although this guy probably didn't know anything about Owen Jones because he's prominent in the UK, not so much in the US, but the Owen Joneses of the world, this is what they lead to. Because Owen Jones, he's not stupid, he's not crazy, he's not ignorant. He knows what he's doing. His audience, not so much. They're more mixed, and there are definitely people like that. People who will just watch the news as a news editor decides to report it, read the commentary of whoever the Owen Jones of America is, and will take it to that level of they will actually end their own life in a really horrific way, to protest. And of course this is highlighted in the media because the media wants to prop such people up. Michael, your thoughts on this guy?
I'm inclined to think that somebody that sets themselves on fire, there's probably something going on psychologically that we're not yet aware of. I can't imagine he's that upset about the war in Israel, or in Gaza, that he felt the need to immolate himself in this way. That being said, I agree with you. He's being treated as a virtual hero all over social media. Jill Stein, who's running for president, I don't remember under what banner she's running, but Jill Stein actually said "rest in power," whatever the guy's name is. I really don't remember it. So yeah, and if I could, I don't know if it's a sidetrack or directly relevant, but I am just really blown away by the hatred there is for Jews out there. And so many people try to hide behind anti-Zionism. And that, I think, it is related because it feeds this type of behavior. But there's this UFC fighter, a former UFC fighter, Jake Shields, who's all over social media and just constantly bashing Jews. And including the other day, he said, a Jew created the Church of Satan. Why isn't it called the Synagogue of Satan? And he said Anne Frank didn't actually write the Diary of Anne Frank, which is a myth because she did write it. But anyways, he's the guy that then will tell people, oh, anytime I criticize Israel, you accuse me of being anti-Semitic. So I posted to him, and I said, you're a pro fighter. Why don't you strap on some balls? And if you hate Jews, just say you hate Jews. Why hide behind being an anti-Zionist? And he responds and he says, well, he said, I don't hate Jews. That's not true. I just criticize Israel. And I said, well, these posts have nothing to do with Israel. Who invented the Church of Satan is irrelevant. to Israel. But that stuff is just so rampant out there to a degree I never imagined, to be perfectly honest with you. And the thing is with these people, they throw out so much, quote, information, end quote. It's impossible to research it all. So they'll say the IDF did this, they did this, they did this, they did, and you're like, oh, and if you're a dummy, like once I see that this guy's making claims about Anne Frank's diary, and I can look that up and I see he's wrong about that, I tend to distrust everything else that comes out of his mouth because of how easy it was to find out he was wrong. But if somebody's not inclined to do that and these people just throw all that information at you, I could see how somebody, especially somebody that's imbalanced mentally, would be influenced by that. And I don't, other than just keep doing what we're doing to combat it, I don't know what else you can do. I certainly wouldn't advocate the government shutting them down or anything like that. But I do think they need to be defeated intellectually, for sure.
So I need to look this up. I may be wrong, but I think the person who started the Church of Satan had some issue of some anti-Semitic comments himself. I really would be surprised if he was a Jew. Also, the Church of Satan was some sort of a kind of a joke. It wasn't like an actual
he was. Anton Zander LaVey was Jewish.
Really?
And yes, he was. Obviously, if he's not a religious Jew, but he was Jewish. But somebody said, the Jews created the Church of Satan. And I said, no, a Jew created the Church of Satan. Why is it that if my Italian friend goes out and does something, no one says the Italians did it? It's just this guy did it. But some Jewish guy did something that some people dislike. I really don't care what he did. The Church of Satan isn't some diabolical, evil organization, despite what religionists would have you think. But nonetheless, who cares what ethnicity he was? Like, what difference does that make? But in this guy's mind and in the minds of the people who follow him, that's important.
Yeah, and I think he called it his thing, the Church of Satan, to piss off religious people. Again,
yes.
He wasn't worshiping the devil. Also, Jill Stein, I believe, said something similar after Castro died. So yeah, she's a consistent
idiot.
Marco.
Yeah, copy and paste kind of reaction to the news, isn't it? Well, when Morgan sent the email talking about this issue, he kind of wrote a line that stuck with me, saying something like, ideas can kill. And by Jimbo, can they just? Of course, it's a tragedy that this 25-year-old is dead, and especially in the way he did. But I'll assume for the purpose of the discussion that he didn't have serious health issues because he was an active member of the Air Force in the United States. And I would like to hope that somebody with such a big issue will probably be picked up by the ranks in there, hopefully. Otherwise, saints preserve us. But in a way, his death, although sad, is quite fitting in the sense that he killed himself in order to protest in favor of the people who hate life. So he destroyed his own life in order to cheer the hater of life, i.e. Hamas and the Palestinians in general. And this is, if you like, the logical conclusion for somebody who takes altruism so seriously, that gets to the point of destroying their own life in order to what, I don't know exactly what in his head was he thought he would have achieved, but the idea that your life is worthless because somebody else needs it more, that's a very juice of altruism, and that's what these guys seem to be running on. And it's frightening that a 25-year-old couldn't envisage a better life, and he decided to just destroy his own life. That's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, I think it's a reflection of the culture. First, that he decided to do it, and second, that he's treated as a hero by so many after doing it. And what does that say? That says to everybody, do this if you want to be a hero. And what kind of a message is that to anybody who's got any disagreement with anything that they don't like? Is what to burn yourself to death? Is it for the good of the cause or whatever. And of course, he acts as perfect propaganda for the very side that the culture is capitulating to in the course of all this. And of course, already his case, that image, this particular moment, is being used all over the place to suggest that there's widespread disagreement with Israel, or that America is divided heavily, and that there is an increasing number of people prepared to even set themselves alight to express an opinion. All of that instantly becomes propaganda. And that's a very good reason not to mention the guy's name for a start, in the same way that I really dislike it when such a big deal is made out of who is the terrorist in a terrorist attack, as opposed to just focusing on the victims, focusing on the ideology that led that person to do it, making sure it's clear why they did it, and that is the enemy, and not giving anyone the air of publicity that they shouldn't have, when we should be celebrating real heroes.
Yeah. So, the same people whose propaganda, got the ideas into the minds of the mind of this guy and the minds of similar people, and ended up, getting him to end his life, are now using that as propaganda for, I guess, hopefully from their perspective, future soldiers who will burn themselves alive, so they can point out again how evil the Jews were, or are. Yeah, sorry, I was also looking up Anton LaVey a bit, and he was friends with a leader of a Nazi party. That's as far as I got with the anti-Semitism. But I have some look, there are Jews who hate Jews, so it's not impossible. But it's an interesting choice of Jew to go after. Of all people, he's not around. He was not prominent when he was around. He had his little joke out there, and some people took it seriously. And now UFC fighters are using him as an example of why the Jews are evil. That's fascinating stuff. I mean, it's something. I'll say this because I was going to say this on the Owen Jones episode, and I forgot. But it's in the way in which specifically he works, but it fits well with the his place within the Palestinian propaganda machine. I've been thinking, somebody once told me Owen Jones is kind of like Alex Jones. I think is what I was, and I didn't really buy that. And then I thought, the person he really reminds me of is Glenn Beck. And I haven't seen anything from Glenn Beck recently, but I remember like 20 or 15 years ago, he had this show on Fox News, which was super popular with conservatives. And the show was basically, he had a whiteboard and he would draw stuff on the whiteboard. And it was things like, look, here's a picture of Obama 20 years ago with some guy whose third cousin once attended the same baseball game as a convicted shoplifter. Coincidence? We report, you decide. That was the whole show pretty much. Now, Owen Jones doesn't have a whiteboard, presumably because whiteboards are racist or something, but he has that that kind of approach to any piece of something that can be used to say that the Jews, without calling Jews are evil. He will go for it. And you can see that just scrolling through his Twitter, like the don't look away tweets are my favorite. He quote tweets something, and it's often things like IDF soldiers in the house of in a house that they took over in Gaza, cooking food or something. And yeah, it's those bits and pieces of things. People buy it. There's a reason Glenn Beck's whiteboard was one of the most popular things among conservatives in the early days of Obama. Michael, I don't know if you were watching that show as religiously as I was, paying attention to every on the whiteboard to understand what the conspiracy is. But
No, I didn't get Fox News station in the big house, so I wasn't
well,
watching
I
Glenn
will look
Beck.
up to see if there's any old
But
episode.
but I did listen to him on the radio, and he did what a lot of these guys do. I didn't realize it at the time, but he was very anti-Trump when Trump was first running. But then once Trump won, slowly but surely he started pandering to Trump. So I don't take those guys seriously. Guys that just have a show that they want to cater or pander to an audience, tell an audience what they want to hear, that's not really my jam. But those types that you said, that's what I was talking about earlier. When they get the whiteboard, the metaphorical whiteboard, look how this is connected to this, and like who the hell has the time to look through every conspiracy theory that you're putting out there? I would do nothing else. You know what I mean? A guy I know, I actually knew him since we were teenagers, tells me one time, "Hey, you need to research this." So I said, okay. I went to Google. I looked it up. I said, okay, this is what I found. You're wrong. He said, oh, no, no, you can't use Google. You got to use DuckDuckGo. Google, they're in on it. So I said, okay. I went to DuckDuckGo. It told me the same thing. I came back to him. He said, no, no, you got to dig deeper. And I told him, why do I get the feeling that I have to dig until I find the answer that you want me to hear? Because I'm going to eventually find some guy that's going to be saying or girl could be, that's going to tell me exactly what you want me to hear. And then you're going to say, aha, and everybody else can be dismissed. That's why those people make me nuts.
Marco, Richard, I don't know if you guys got to watch Glenn Beck here in the UK. We don't have Fox News in our house. I don't know if it used to be available here, and at some point it wasn't.
He's
But
not
have you
on
ever?
Fox anymore. He has his own
Oh
station.
yeah. This was long. This was Obama time, and I think he was fired. I don't remember what for, but he was fired while he was doing well in the ratings. Um, if I remember correctly. Anyway, any thoughts on that or anything else?
I have no idea who the guy is, and I think you guys spend way too much time on social media listening to whackers. And it's like Daniel just now was whinging about the fact that now Owen Jones appears on his feed, and because he's done some research, perhaps, and that's what happens. You look up these guys, and then they keep appearing on your feed. The algorithm assumes that you're interested. You couldn't care less, but there isn't a way of telling the algorithm, I don't care about these guys. Even if you say, show fewer of these kind of posts, it doesn't matter. They're going to find more crap linked to that kind of nonsense. So you're going to see more and more of the stuff you actually don't want to see. But anyway, no, we've not been following any of this kind of
for me, I've not named Glenn Beck. All I've got is a word association which says memorabilia collection, but I don't know what that is or whether it's the right guy or not. But I think if it is the right guy, I think he's got a big memorabilia collection. But of what and why, I can't remember, which is not very helpful. Yeah.
Maybe you have a friend who's a fan of the singer Beck, who has a memorabilia collection of Beck memorabilia.
I think it might be American memorabilia, which may fit with the appearance on Fox News. But again,
All right,
Rozzy, you've lost control, Rozzy. We're now
all
on
right.
to Beck the
Good.
singer, and it's way out of hand here.
It's good that we're getting towards the end, and it's good that James Valiant has come to my aid in the chat and says Jesus was Jewish. Why don't we call it the synagogue of Christianity?
Nice. Yes, good point. As the head of Mossad would say.
All right. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Perhaps, by the way, Marco, maybe we do spend too much time on social media, but in my defense, I don't spend nearly as much time there as Michael does. He argues with all these people. He argues with like libertarians and stuff. I don't know how he
What
does
is this? Throw me under the bus? Hey, I'm bad, but not as bad as that guy.
No, this is actually me. This is me segueing into you telling us where people can find find out more about you and
Okay.
hear more from you.
Well, the best place to find me is not on social media. The only reason I'm really on social media is to promote my podcast, The Rational Egoist. It's available wherever you get podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere. And if I don't say so myself, it's great. I have all types of different guests on, experts on all types of subjects that people would be interested in, from politics, economics, history, philosophy, criminal justice. I do it all.
Yeah, and often the head of Mossad is with you in the
He
podcast.
is, yes.
Very entertaining. So
he insisted.
Marco, Richard, where can people find more of your work?
Best place to find some of what we've been up to is on the Briefly Objective, which is taking footage from this channel, editing down the essence of it, adding some explanatory videos and images, and repackaging it to make sure it's really clear and really concise, and you can share it with all your friends from whatever organization they happen to secretly rely on.
And in less than a minute, the new video premieres on that channel. That video is titled How the West Perpetuates Conflict in the Middle East. So that is coming up next. I am at Razi Ginsburg on Twitter. I am there from time to time. So I don't argue with libertarians, but maybe I will if they tell me that I'm kind of like Anton LaVey. Thanks, guys, for joining me. Thanks, everybody, for watching. If you like it, please like it and share it. And of course, if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. We will be back tomorrow with the Daily Objective and with the reality show. See you then.
Take care, guys.